Have you ever stopped and thought about how much of who you are today was shaped by the things you did as a kid? Think about it for a minute. Maybe you played sports. Maybe you spent every afternoon riding bikes around the neighborhood until the streetlights came on. Maybe you were just hanging out with friends, building forts, collecting baseball cards, or getting into enough trouble to make life interesting. If you're watching this channel, there's a pretty good chance you spent a lot of your childhood playing video games. Now, most people look at gaming as entertainment, as a hobby, something we do to pass the time. But what if there was more to it than that? What if all those hours spent sitting in front of the television, gripping that NES controller, mastering combos onto Genesis, actually helped shape the person you became? Today, we're going to take a trip down memory lane and talk about something I think every retro gamer can relate to. How did video games shape who we are today? Because whether we realize it or not, those games taught us a lot more than just how to defeat Bowser. One thing I've noticed about a lot of gamers is how observant they are, and honestly, it makes sense. Retro games forced us to pay attention. Back then, games didn't always hold your hand. There weren't giant glowing arrows telling you where to go, or objective markers plastered all over the screen. You had to figure it out for yourself. Remember searching for hidden doors in Zelda? Or testing every suspicious looking wall in Metroid? How about trying to figure out secret areas in Super Mario Bros. By jumping around like a maniac just because something felt different? Games taught us to look beyond the obvious, to examine every corner, to notice patterns. You start questioning what everyone else was ignoring. And if you think about it, those skills translate surprisingly well into real life. Some people become excellent problem solvers because they're used to looking past the first answer. Others develop strong troubleshooting skills because they're naturally curious about how things work. Sounds familiar? Maybe that's why so many gamers ended up in technology, engineering, IT, or other fields that require careful observation and critical thinking. I mean, after spending years hunting for secrets programmed by the developers, diagnosing a computer almost feels easy. Well, easier. Let's not get carried away here. Now, let's talk about patience, because retro gamers were not exactly known for being forgiving. Nowadays, if you fail a level, you often respawn right where you left off. Back in the day, good luck. You might be starting over from the beginning. Some games didn't even bother saving your progress. Basically, developers looked at you and said, figure it out. Games taught us that sometimes charging headfirst into a situation wasn't the best strategy. Sometimes you had to wait, watch, learn, observe the enemy patterns, find that right opportunity. Whether it was timing a jump in Mega Man, or waiting for the perfect opening in Punch-Out, or surviving a difficult platforming session in Castlevania, patience was often the difference between success and failure. And honestly, that's a lesson many of us still use today. Not every problem can be solved immediately. Sometimes the smartest move is to stop, look at the situation, and make your move when it's right. Of course, some of us learn the opposite lesson. We learn to charge directly into danger and hope for the best, which explains why some gamers can walk confidently into a meeting without a plan, while others spend 2 weeks preparing for it. We all had different gaming styles, and those styles may have followed us into adulthood. Now, speaking of styles, let's talk strategy. Have you ever met someone who played sports video games as a kid and now thinks they can run an actual football team? Come on, you know who I'm talking about. Maybe it's you. No judgment. After all, countless sessions of Madden, Tecmo Bowl, NFL Blitz, you start feeling pretty qualified. You know every play, every formation, every adjustment. Suddenly, you're sitting on the couch on Sunday criticizing professional coaches who have forgotten more football than you'll ever know. But gaming has a funny way of giving us confidence. It teaches us strategic thinking. Many retro games required planning. You had to manage your resources, decide when to use an item, figure out risk versus reward. Role-playing games were especially good at this. Do you use that healing potion now, or save it till a boss fight that may be even harder? Do you spend your gold on new equipment, or save it for something better? These decisions taught us how to think ahead, evaluate the options, and consider our consequences. Honestly, those same thought processes show up in everyday life. Maybe not while fighting dragons, definitely while making decisions about work, finances, and personal goals. Here's a big one. Retro gaming taught us how to fail. A lot. Seriously. If you ever played Ghosts and Goblins, Battletoads, any number of brutally difficult games from the 80s and 90s, then you've experienced failure on a level modern gamers can barely imagine. And yet, we kept coming back. Why? Because somewhere along the way, games taught us something very important. Failure wasn't the end. It was part of the process. You died, you learned, you tried again. Then you got a little further, and then you died again. Then you learned even more. Eventually, you would succeed. And that's a pretty powerful lesson for a kid to learn, because life works the same way. Nobody gets everything right the first attempt. Success usually comes after countless mistakes, adjustments, and retries. Retro gamers become surprisingly resilient because the games demanded it. And while we may have thrown our controller once, twice, more than that, we still learned to keep going. Gaming wasn't always just about beating a game. Sometimes it was about the people around us. Think about the friends you've played with, the sleepovers, the weekend tournaments, the arguments over whose turn it was, and the endless debates on which console was better. Those experiences created connections. Some of our best childhood memories aren't about specific games. They're about the people we shared them with. The laughter, the competition, the inside jokes. Gaming gave us common ground. It brought people together. And it's still happening today. Many of us are connecting over games decades after they originally released. We're sharing memories, stories, and experiences with people we've never met in person. And yet, somehow, it feels like we've known them forever. So, when people ask if video games shaped who we are today, I don't think there's any doubt. They taught us observation, patience, strategy, resilience, teamwork, friendship, and maybe, just maybe, they taught us a little bit about ourselves. The games may be old, the systems may be gathering dust on a shelf, but those lessons, those stayed with us. And every time we pick up a controller, we're reminded of where those lessons started. Now, I want to hear from you. How did gaming shape who you are today? Did it make you more patient, a better planner, problem solver? Did it build those lifelong friendships? Or maybe it taught you something completely unexpected? Let me know down in the comments. And if you enjoyed this trip down memory lane, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more retro gaming goodness. Until next time.